Hello, we're Lilith and Lara here with Coffee, Cakes, and Castles, where we will be covering the 20,000 to 25,000 castles of Germany. We'll be talking about historical facts, myths, legends, and drama.
And today we will be talking about some fascinating history, including a castle owned by the same family since the 12th century and a ghostly legend.
Hello, I'm Lilith from America.
And I'm Lara from Germany, and we're just two girls who happen to love all things involving coffee, cake, and castles, especially when you can have coffee and cake inside a castle. We're heading to the Moselle region where a castle rises in the hills. It has been home to the same family for almost 900 years, and some say that the fierce daughter of a count still haunts its halls. This is Berg Eltz.
Yes, so we have an exciting episode today, but before we get to that, um, I will be heading to an American castle this weekend.
Ooh.
Yes.
Which one is it going to be?
So it is Castle Gwen, and it is outside of Nashville, Tennessee. I guess technically it's in Arrington. Um, and yes, this man it's privately owned, and he opens it up once a year during the Renaissance Fair in May. Um, so
Nice.
yes, well, we will not be doing a whole episode on it because it's not in Germany. I can just post, I'll make a post on
Yeah.
Instagram, Coffee Cakes and Castles on Instagram.
Like a
And
special episode, American
yes,
version. Yeah, that's
yes,
amazing.
we can I'll add some facts and things on there and some pictures
Yeah.
of our American castle.
I'm excited. And you have to send some pictures.
Yes,
Amazing.
will do.
Oh, cool. Yes. So we'll start with how to visit. As always, we give some interesting facts about how you can access the castle. And if you would like to see Burg Eltz for yourself, you can head to the Moselle region of Germany. And the castle stands in the Eltz Forest Nature Reserve in the Rhineland-Palatine. It's Rhineland-Pfalz in Germany, and it's weird to see the English word. It's between Koblenz and Trier, sitting atop a 70-meter rock spur above the Elzbach River. Um, it can be assessed by a 15 to 20-minute walk down a forest path or by shuttle from the parking area. And you have to make sure to check the website for hours because this castle is open seasonally and the interior can only be visited on guided tours. So these guided tours run continuously during opening hours, and you can check those on the website as well. And if you do choose to take a tour, you'll be able to see the Rübenach House, the Rodendorf House, and the Kempenich House, as well as original medieval rooms kept as they would have been in the original state, which is really cool.
Oh.
And the treasury and armory are self-guided, so you can just walk yourself through them, and they are included with admission. You can see actual artifacts of the Middle Ages, and you have to buy the tickets in person, so you can't order them online. You just have to be there in person and buy them. So
Yes, and this one is really cool, and we'll get into it when we talk about the history and the architecture and everything like that. But yes, you can actually see some of the rooms as they were, which is really cool. Um, so this one's going to be an exciting one. So striking an impressive figure in the hills above the Moselle, Berg Eltz has remained intact and in the same family for almost 900 years, as Lara said. The fact that it remained intact through the centuries is rare in itself. Only two other castles in the region, Burisheim and Lissingen, can say the same. Did I
yeah,
say this correctly?
yes, you did.
Okay. And Burg Eltz was first documented in 1157 when Rudolf von Eltz appeared in a charter of Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa. And yes, that is the same Frederick Barbarossa who ended up at odds with Henry the Lion of Braunschweig. So again, there's many connections. And the earliest surviving structure includes the Romanesque lower levels of the Plot Eltz Tower. Original site was the original site was a guarded trade route between the Moselle River and the Eifel region, and there's even remains of Celtic and Roman fortifications. And Laura, have you been to the Eifel region? Because I had to look up pictures. I've never been there. to that area, and it looks so pretty.
It's amazing. I've been there and I just loved it. And I think it's like one of those regions where like you don't really like you know it, but you have to be there to know how pretty it is. Like pictures are not doing justice.
And even from the pictures, I mean,
Yeah, it's so
it looks
pretty,
like there's
right?
rivers, a lot of rivers and the
Yeah.
mountains, and it just looks beautiful.
And you can bike there very nicely. So
Oh. Well, I am not into biking, as you know. I would love to go hiking. I would go
I
hiking.
know you learned biking here in Germany with me, and it was a crazy experience because you were coming here, and I was like, "Okay, you can't ride a bike. That is crazy. We have to go to school by bike."
I can ride a bike. I cannot ride a bike well, and I do not enjoy it.
Yep, I do enjoy it
Yeah.
a lot. I'm doing it a lot, but yeah, I know.
But yeah, so we will add hiking to the Eifel region on our
Mhm.
list of things to do. And
Yes.
again, like as we've mentioned, Berg Eltz actually has that forest that we can check out some of those trails.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
And it is important to talk about how Burg Eltz was structured. For most of its history, it functioned as a Ganerbenschaft or a joint heir community. This was a legal structure in which multiple branches of the same noble family inherited a castle together and lived side by side with it. And for Burg Eltz, this divide happened in 1268 when Rudolph's great grandson Elias Wilhelm and Theoderich would separate into three different lines following a family dispute. There was Elts of the Golden Lion, Elts of the Silver Lion, and Elts of the Buffalo Horns. And each branch had its own coat of arms and would construct their own residential complexes, which is why Burg Eltz looks the way it does, with lots of towers that are like different heights, all combined in onto the narrow rock spur. And the wings had their own independent households. At its height, Burg Eltz was densely populated noble community, and the castle's official site notes that up to 100 family members lived here simultaneously, spread across more than 100 rooms, which
Mhm.
is crazy.
Yes.
The structure rose in 8 major towers, some reaching up to 40 meters above the rock. And this arrangement made Burg Eltz one of the most architecturally complex Ganerbenburgen in Germany and is a great example of how a castle can be built up over time. One common space would have been the Knights Hall, which is where all the families would come together for things like festivals and important meetings. And in 500 years, there was only one instance where the families would have a deadly clash, according to one source in 1372. Johann von Eltz of the Buffalo Horns would kill Heinrich of the Golden Lion.
Yes, and I tried to look into what happened that
Mhm.
he, killed one of his family members, could not find it, but I was very interested as to why. Um,
Yes.
and it is interesting. So we had been joking, when we were visiting some of these castles that they would build these other palaces, like, and castles where they could still see each other in the distance, Neuschwanstein and Hohenschwangau, like, "Oh, I'm gonna build my own castle over here away from my family." And here we have a castle where these families have separated, but they're all kind of contained,
Crazy. It's
into one
crazy.
structure. Yes, which is very interesting, yeah. And so Jamie, my husband, if you're listening, this is what we should do instead of like a family compound. We need to have a family castle and we
Oh,
can
yeah,
just
and
each
I'll be
have our
moving
own.
in.
Yes, Laura, you're included in this. We'll just
We
each
are
have our
family,
own.
sorry.
We'll have our
With
own tower and wings and everything.
and I'll have a cool name, like, I don't know. I'll have to find a really cool name for like the Buffalo Horns or the Golden Lion.
Oh,
I'll be the Golden Horse or something. That's not too cool. I have to think
yes.
about one. Maybe I'll come
We're
up
gonna
with a
come
cool
up.
name.
Yes, we're gonna come up with our names. We'll do that. Okay. And
Maybe you can ask your daughter about it. She might have crazy cool ideas.
she might. I'll ask her what our family name should be. Good idea.
Amazing.
Okay. And we'll come back with that next episode. Yeah.
Yes.
And back to Berg Eltz. So there have been some minor, and I guess in the case of Johann von Eltz and Heinrich, major family drama. But the real drama would come in the 14th century when Berg Eltz would encounter its only major conflict. If you remember, there were formal feuds during this time period, and we had the Eltz feud or Eltzer Veda from 1331 to 1336. We've talked about the ministerialists before, and as a reminder, they were legally unfree knights who were members of the lower nobility. And this is important to note in this case because the Archbishop of Trier and Elector Baldwin of Luxembourg decided that he was going to take the ministerialists of the castles Ehrenberg, Eltz, Schörnig, and Waldeck as vassals of Trier, which the ministerialists had no interest in. The archbishop believed that the previous archbishop had been weak and had allowed the knights to acquire their autonomy and rights, even though they had originally been vassals and fief holders of the archbishop. And of course, these knights wanted to keep their autonomy. So what happened? Well, the archbishop went all in and he built 2 counter castles. Just like they sound, counter castles were used either to counter a hostile neighbor or as a way to launch attacks at an enemy. In this case, Baldwin was launching his attacks, and that's how the castles of Rauschenberg and Trest Eltz or Balden Eltz were built.
Mhm.
While he wasn't necessarily wanting to destroy anyone, he did want things to go his way. And he was going to do whatever he needed to in order to get it. The siege of Eltz Castle by the Archbishop is the first time in recorded history of artillery being used in Germany with primitive cannons or Potsdiffer. These cannons were mainly used to fire large bolts. The feud ended in favor of the Archbishop in 1336 or 1337, and on the documents conceding to his terms appeared the names of the brothers Henry the Elder and Henry the Younger of Ehrenberg, John of Eltz, Conrad the Red of Schörneck, Rudolf, William Vinnen, and John, called Booz von Waldeck. So remember, we had mentioned them in their formal feud, so they were part of this one. And
Hmm.
William Barrett and Hertwin Winnigan, Emperor Charles IV would grant Burg Eltz to Baldwin in 1354, making it a fief of Trier and the family his vassals. And this was a feud that was filled with attacks and counterattacks over the years. And so, really, just think medieval battles. That is what was happening here.
Yeah.
Yes. You can still see the ruins of Trest Eltz to this day.
And as we move into the 14th century through 17th centuries, Berg Eltz begins to take on the form we recognize today. And the castle was built wing by wing with different branches of the Eltz family expanding it based on their own needs. The 14th and 15th centuries saw the rise of the Rübenach house, whose lower 5 stories belong to this period. These are early Gothic structures, meaning they are tall, narrow, and fortified. Their pointed arches and steep roofs are some of the earliest Gothic elements on the rock spur. And then between 1470 and 1520, construction was completed on the Greater Rodendorf House, one of the most architecturally refined wings of the castle. This phase includes the Gothic flag hall, a ceremonial space with its characteristic ribbed vaulting and vertical emphases. It's one of the best preserved late Gothic interiors in the Rhineland. And by the 15th and 16th century, Berg Eltz truly took form. Many of the interiors that survive today date from this period, including the Rodendorf kitchen with its massive hearth and smoke-blackened stonework. In fact, it still stands as it did during the Middle Ages, which is pretty cool. Like, I
Yes.
don't know, I think it's amazing.
Mhm.
The gatekeeper's house positioned beside the inner gate also belongs to this era, as does the coach house built in the 1500s when wheel transport became more common among the nobility. The 17th century brought another wave of transformation. Hans Jakob zu Eltz and Anna Elisabeth von Metzenhausen expanded the castle and, in classic aristocratic fashion, sealed their union in stone by combining their coats of arms on architectural elements. This period marks the transition from the medieval austerity to early modern comfort with larger windows and more decorative interiors.
And if you step inside to the interior, we have the dressing chamber, a beautiful room decorated with 15th century murals. And this one you should check out the castle website to see because it's a true remnant of the beauty of the Middle Ages. And nearby is the angel room, named for the carved wooden angels that are watching from the ceiling beams. Historically, this space served a practical purpose, used for storing hunting weapons, as Berg Eltz is surrounded by dense forests, and those forests can still be explored to this day. And the study, by contrast, belongs to a much later moment. It was furnished in 1881 by Countess von Eltz during a time when medieval romanticism was making a revival with dark wood and upholstered furniture. And perhaps the heart of Burg Eltz is the treasury and armory, as it holds a collection that spans over 500 years. So it's a very impressive collection and a very real look into the history of Burg Eltz in the Middle Ages. And you'll find ceremonial swords and finely worked armor to goldsmithing masterpieces, reliquaries, drinking vessels, and diplomatic gifts. It's one of the most important private collections of its kind in Europe and preserved today in an ancestral home rather than a museum, which is very cool to think about.
It's
Yes,
amazing.
it is amazing. And I think Berg Eltz is really interesting because, we've heard about, I think Hohenzollern is the other one that we've
Mhm.
talked about that's belonged to a family. Um, Also for centuries, and they have been the owners of it as well. But that one, we talked about there were three different building phases um, because it was destroyed, rebuilt, and Berg Eltz has it.
It
It
has a
has
history, like step by
yes,
step. That is so cool.
it's had a step by step history. Some of these rooms are the same rooms that were there when it was originally built. Like it's yes,
It's
like
just
it
so
is
cool.
a piece of history. Yeah.
And we come now to the question, how did Berg Eltz survive through the years intact? As we just said, it's crazy
Mhm.
how it evolved over the years. And Berg Eltz was able to avoid destruction during the 30 Years' War through diplomacy and alliances, something that many were unable to accomplish. And the castle remained continuously inhabited by the Eltz family, who still owns it today, which is so cool. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know. I think it's impressive.
Yes.
No one conquered it or took it from them. It's just theirs.
Yes.
And we have Count Karl von Eltz to thank for a major restoration that occurred from 1844 to 1888. We've seen it before. This was a period where there was a renewed interest in medieval romanticism, and it led to Karl renovating the castle. It cost him the equivalent of 15 million euros.
Mhm.
Just let that thing sink in, like 15
Yes.
million. It's crazy.
It's a lot.
And
Maintaining a castle.
yes, maybe.
It's like, maybe we
Maybe we
don't
have to
need
talk to Jamie, like, maybe we will have a smaller castle.
yes, maybe we'll have a mini castle now that I'm thinking about the actual numbers that it takes to make this happen.
And Karl took the renovations very seriously and was in contact with the Germanisches National Museum for advice on restoration, which is pretty cool. Like he did not like walk and say, I can do anything by myself. He like asked them for help or information. And the castle is still privately owned by the Count of Eltz Kempenich and is surrounded by the protected Eltz Forest Nature Reserve, which is pretty cool. They have like a forest there, and you have to look at pictures. It's really, really pretty.
Hmm. Yes. And let's talk about some of the notable figures of the family of Eltz. It's worth beginning with an honorable mention. The earliest known reference to the family appears in the late 7th century with Eberhard zu Eltz, a Frankish citizen of Trier. His name survives only as a historical trace, but it marks the first time the name was recorded and the start of a family that would eventually rise the ranks of the Holy Roman Empire. And from there, the records would become more clear. In 1324, another family member stepped into a major ecclesiastical role. Canon Arnold von Eltz, appointed by Prince Bishop of Cammen by Pope John the 22nd. His elevation triggered conflict with Louis IV, illustrating how deeply the Eltz family was entangled in the ongoing power struggle between the papacy and the empire. The Eltz family's reach extended far beyond Germany. In the late 14th century, Robin von Eltz emerged as a rare example of a family member active on the Baltic frontier. From 1385 to 1389, he served as the Master of the Livonian Order, which was a branch of the Teutonic Knights. A bit of a history refresher, the Teutonic Knights were a medieval Catholic military formed in the late 12th century during the Crusades, and the Livonian branch were the remnants of the Livonian Brothers of the Sword. Robin von Eltz's position placed him at the center of the crusading politics of northeastern Europe. And in the 16th century, we have the prominent Jacob III zu Eltz from 1510 to 1581, born into the Kempenich line. Jacob rose through the cathedral hierarchy to become Prince Elector and Archbishop of Trier, one of the 7 electors responsible for choosing the Holy Roman Emperor. During his long tenure, he became a central force in the Counter-Reformation, working closely with the Jesuits to reinforce Catholic doctrine and suppress Protestant influence within its territories. His political and religious authority made him one of the defining ecclesiastical princes of the age. And a century later, the family reached what may have been its political peak with Philip Karl von Eltz-Kempenich, from 1665 to 1743, when he became the Archbishop of Mainz, and he automatically assumed the role of Imperial Arch-Chancellor, the highest-ranking ecclesiastical office in the empire. Philip Karl's influence extended far beyond the Rhine. During the War of Polish Succession in 1733, he allied the Archbishopric of Mainz with the Habsburgs, which led the Archbishop to order the fortification of Mainz. And I feel like our Mainz episode is going to be a really big one because
Definitely.
it's been mentioned in almost all of our other episodes.
True that.
Yes. And he also was the one who would build Eltz Manor in Vukovar, Croatia, after acquiring the lordship of Vukovar in 1736. And the 17th century brought yet another figure of regional importance, Jakob zu Eltz, who in 1624 was granted the hereditary office of Field Marshal of the Electorate of Trier, and this role made him the archbishopric's highest military officer, responsible for leading its vassals during a century marked by political instability and war. As the early modern period unfolded, the family's status continued to rise. Count Emmerich von and zu Eltz represents the moment when the Eltz line transitioned from medieval ministerialists into Reichsgrafen, or Counts of the Empire, a title formally granted to the elder line in 1733 by Emperor Charles VI. And finally, the story carries us into the 19th century. In 1811, another Emmerich von Eltz renounced his German estates and received the dominion of Vukovar in Croatia, where Philip Karl von Eltz-Kempenich had earlier built Eltz Manor. Emmerich's life took an unexpected international turn, and in 1817 he escorted the Archduchess Leopoldina of Austria to the Rio de Janeiro, where she married Dom Pedro, the future first emperor of Brazil. And through him, the Eltz family briefly touched the political world of South America. And we've come to the modern line with Count Johann Jakob zu Eltz, the 34th generation. And today, the castle remains in the hands of Count Johann Jakob zu Eltz, continuing an unbroken line of family stewardship stretching back nearly 900 years, which is definitely a rarity in European history. Though we've had one other castle so far that we've mentioned that's been in the same family, and that is Hohenzollern.
As you mentioned, yeah. And we promised a ghost story, so let's talk about one more notable figure in Berg Eltz's history. In the 15th century, Agnes of Eltz, the daughter of the Count of Eltz, was promised, as was customary of the time, to the Knight of Braunsberg. Agnes made it clear she was not interested, finding him by reports dull and aloof. One day at a festival, Agnes could not escape his advances, and she struck him in front of the other festival goers. Enraged, it is reported that he threw his gloves at the feet of the Elts family and left in humiliation. Agnes and her brothers feared retaliation, and they prepared themselves for a battle, but it didn't come immediately. One night after the family, the Knight of Braunsberg returned with armed men. The men of the family had left the same day for a hunting trip, and Agnes donned her brother's armor. Not realizing who it was, the Knights of Braunsberg struck her in the chest and killed her. Upon discovery that it was actually Agnes he had struck down, he fled, never to be seen again. The armor and battle axe that Agnes used that night are on display today in the Countess room, which is considered the most haunted part of Burg Eltz. Visitors and staff have reported lights turning on and off, locked doors opening, footsteps and whispers, and a female apparition in armor.
And there have been some other reported hauntings, including a phantom knight appearing on horseback by the gate of the castle, some saying that it's the ghost of the Knight of Brownsburg coming to seek forgiveness.
And before we come to an end, we have some fun facts about Berg Eltz. Berg Eltz was used as inspiration for Cinderella's castle in the animated Disney film. It's
Mhm.
so cool that like many Disney films are inspired by castles in Germany.
Yes.
And was also featured on the only 500 Deutsche Mark from 1965 to 1992. Crazy how long this Berg was on the like
Yeah.
on that. That's crazy.
So would your parents, like, did they have I'm assuming they would have seen, like, the Burg Eltz?
I will have to ask them because that is crazy. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know if my parents ever had a 500 like bill, dollar bill or euro bill or mark bill, but
Yeah.
I'll ask them.
Yeah, because that's pretty neat. And most importantly, is there coffee and cake to be had at Burg
Ooh.
Eltz? And the answer is yes. You can have coffee and cake at this castle, and it looks like there's different cakes that can be ordered, like Käsekuchen and apple Streuselkuchen, and then of course coffee. And more than just coffee and cake, there's also several designated hiking trails that you can explore. And also, when I looked at pictures of the cafe, it has, like, nice outdoor patio seating too, yeah.
Let's go.
I know, we need to, because then we can, like, go tour the castle, we can sit out on the
Mhm.
patio and have coffee and cake, and then we
Oh
can go
my
for a little
god.
hike. Yeah, it sounds like a really nice day.
Yes. And this is a castle that is filled with almost 900, just say it slowly, 900 years of history, with beautifully preserved original rooms and coffee and cake.
Mhm.
What more could you want?
Yes. I know. We'll have to designate, like, a full day to this one.
Yes, at
This is
least.
definitely for sure, we're going here, yeah. And we had another listener request, so we'll be returning to the story of King Ludwig II next week, with or I'll see if I can get it done by next week, because there's a lot of information on
Mhm.
these 2, and it's the Neues Schloss Herrenchiemsee and Schloss Linderhof, and if anyone else has a castle they're interested in hearing about, you can leave us a comment or DM us on Instagram at Coffee Cakes and Castles.
And I'm sure you all can tell that we're doing this just for fun. But if you're enjoying listening in, please feel free to like or subscribe because that helps us to see if you like want to hear more about us or yeah, just enjoying it. So yeah, always happy about your feedback and yeah, thank you for listening. It was such a fun episode and let's talk next week.
Yes, thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.